When someone challenges you publicly, what exactly are you reacting to? Are you reacting to the actual threat, or are you just reacting to your own adrenaline? Think about the last time it happened. You are sitting in a meeting, or perhaps staring at a passive-aggressive email. Someone throws an unearned insult, makes a sarcastic joke at your expense, or casually questions your competence in front of your peers. Immediately, your body betrays you. It happens in a fraction of a second. Your hands get cold. Your heart rate violently spikes, hammering against your ribs. Your breathing becomes shallow. A rush of heat climbs up your neck, and your brain screams at you to do something. It begs you to talk fast, to justify yourself, to fight back, to clear your name and prove them wrong. In that exact moment, you are experiencing the raw, physical reality of disrespect. But here is the absolute status consequence of that moment. The second you speak from that spike of adrenaline, you lose. By rushing to defend your position with a shaking voice, you prove to everyone watching that this person's careless words have the supreme power to regulate your internal weather. You step out of your own frame, and you step completely into theirs. You do this because you are trying to catch a falling knife. You think you are protecting your reputation, but you are actually bleeding on the floor. There is a different way to operate. Today, you are going to learn a protocol called the Kinetic Decoupling. It is the specific, mechanical ability to physically and psychologically split an incoming attack into two entirely separate, harmless parts. Most modern internet advice will tell you to handle disrespect by just glaring at the person. They tell you to give them the silent treatment, to stare them down, and to pretend you do not care, all while your heart beats wildly out of your chest. But faking indifference is not leverage. White-knuckling your chair to hide your panic is not power. That is performance, not discipline. It is a peasant strategy because it still makes the attacker the center of your universe. We are not here to build a theatrical mask for you to hide behind. We are going to build the real engine. Why does someone else's bad mood suddenly become your emergency? To understand how to truly neutralize disrespect without faking it, we first have to look at history. In the Motngin Tarm Trum Sao Muis, Abraham Lincoln, the Moisoth President of the United States, was tasked with leading a violently divided nation through the American Civil War. The pressure was unimaginable, but his greatest daily frustrations often came from his own side. His top commander, General George McClellan, was notoriously arrogant. McClellan routinely ignored Lincoln's orders, belittled the president in public, and even refused to see Lincoln when the president personally visited his home. When Lincoln was faced with this blatant insubordination, he did not scream. He did not fire off an immediate, emotionally charged response to protect his ego. Instead, he utilized a specific architectural pause. He wrote what he called hot letters. Lincoln poured all of his rage, his sharpest criticisms, and his frustration onto the paper. He wrote exactly what the impulsive ego wanted to say. Then, he folded the letter, put it in his desk drawer, and never sent it. Lincoln understood a fundamental rule of power. He let the heat die in the drawer, so he could deal strictly with the cold, strategic facts the next day. He understood that human aggression and disrespect are not commands that must be answered. They are requests for a transaction. The attacker is trying to hand you their emotional chaos, desperately hoping you will synchronize with it. Now, look at your own life. You are not fighting a civil war, but your nervous system does not know the difference. Picture a modern meeting room. A colleague speaks condescendingly about your project in front of the entire team. They use a tone specifically designed to make you feel small. Before they even finish their sentence, your ego violently takes the wheel. You interrupt. You start speaking slightly faster than normal. You begin explaining the variables, justifying your timeline, and rapidly listing the reasons why it was not your fault. You genuinely believe you are defending your competence. In reality, you are falling directly into the synchronization trap. Let us shift to a more intimate arena. Your smartphone. You are having a perfectly peaceful evening at home. Suddenly, the screen lights up. It is a text message from a difficult family member, or a passive-aggressive comment in a work group chat. You read it, and you instantly feel that heavy, acidic drop in your stomach. What is your immediate response? You drop whatever important or relaxing thing you were doing. Your thumbs start flying across the glass. You draft a defensive reply within 30 seconds to correct the record or set a boundary. You hit send, feeling a brief rush of vindication. But intellectually, you know that is a lie. You were not communicating. You were not setting a boundary. You were simply trying to urgently discharge the anxiety that they just infected you with. An aggressive person is entirely reliant on your reaction to fuel their own momentum. Kinetic energy cannot exist in a vacuum. It requires a surface to bounce off. They need your panic. They need your defensiveness. They need your rapid, over-explained text message to justify their behavior and keep the drama alive. When you rapidly explain yourself, you become the exact surface they push against. You broadcast a signal to everyone in the room and to the person on the other end of the phone that you can be completely derailed from your baseline with a single careless sentence. You do not work for them. You possess the structural authority to simply decline the transaction. This realization completely shifts your objective in any conflict. You are no longer trying to win the argument, because trying to win means you have accepted their premise. You are simply trying to break the circuit. You are refusing to process their emotional credit card. But this leaves us with a critical problem. If we know we are not supposed to urgently defend ourselves, and we know we are not supposed to just sit there glaring like a fake movie villain, how exactly do we listen to a direct, humiliating insult without accidentally absorbing it into our bloodstream? How do you listen to a direct, humiliating insult without accidentally absorbing it into your bloodstream? To achieve this, we have to look at the exact architecture of disrespect. Right now, when someone speaks to you with a sharp, sarcastic, or condescending tone, you hear it as one unified attack. You take the emotional tone personally, and your brain immediately tries to fight the tone rather than the facts. You feel the sting of their delivery, and your ego desperately wants to correct their attitude. This is where you must deploy the core mechanism of this doctrine, the kinetic decoupling. To decouple means to surgically separate. You must realize that every verbal attack, every passive-aggressive comment, and every hostile text message carries two entirely different things. First, it carries the informational payload. This is the literal, cold, factual data of what they are saying. Second, it carries the kinetic energy. This is the heat, the sarcasm, the volume, the smirk, the dramatic sigh, the passive aggression. Let us ground this in a concrete scene. You are in the office, and you hand in a project to a colleague. They want to assert dominance over you. They look at the document, smirk, and say loudly in front of the rest of the room, "I see you finally decided to finish that report." If you operate like most people, your brain fuses the facts and the heat together. You hear the word finally. You feel your face get hot. You react to the sarcasm, and you immediately fire back. You say, "I have been working on it all week, actually, and I had other priorities I was managing." Look at the catastrophic cost of that reaction. You are now defending your work ethic to someone who was deliberately trying to bait you. You stepped down from your pedestal and decided to wrestle them in the dirt. You legitimize their disrespect by acknowledging it as a valid topic of conversation. But what happens if you apply the kinetic decoupling? You act as a mental filter. The moment the sentence hits your ears, you split it in half. You identify the heat, the smirk, the condescending tone, and the passive-aggressive use of the word finally. Then, you identify the payload. Stripped of all its emotional heat, the only actual usable data in their sentence is, "The report is finished." This is your usable new value. You must train your mind to operate like a sieve. It catches all the emotional heat, the toxic energy, and the sarcasm, and it discards them entirely. It allows only the cold, factual payload to pass through into your consciousness. And you address only the payload. In this scenario, you look at them calmly and reply, "Yes, the report is on your desk. Let me know if you need any revisions. You completely ignore the bait. By doing this, their kinetic energy hits a brick wall and reflects entirely back onto them. They threw a punch, and you simply stepped out of the way, letting their own momentum carry them to the floor. They are left holding their own awkward, unreciprocated aggression in front of the room. Never intercept a falling knife. If you try to catch it, you will bleed. Let the heat hit the floor and pick up only the data. High-status individuals do not have meta-arguments about tone with low-status attackers. They do not demand respect, because demanding respect proves you do not have it. They simply refuse to process the emotional data. But knowing the difference between heat and facts is easy in theory. It makes perfect logical sense when you are sitting calmly and analyzing it from a distance. How do you actually execute it in real time, when the adrenaline is already pumping through your veins and your body is screaming at you to fight back? How do you stop the physical anxiety from reaching your mouth? You now understand the theory of decoupling, but in the real world, biology happens faster than logic. When a verbal attack hits you, it is not just a philosophical event. It is a 3-second biological reality. The moment the disrespect lands, your amygdala fires. Within milliseconds, adrenaline and cortisol flood your bloodstream. Your evolutionary programming treats a sarcastic comment in a boardroom exactly the same as a physical predator in the wild. If you open your mouth in this exact moment, you will fail. You will leak panic. You know this feeling intimately. It is the stuttering, the voice cracking, the sudden inability to find the right word. It is the breathless, rushed delivery that happens when you try to speak over someone else to defend yourself. Without a gap between their stimulus and your response, your internal chaos becomes public record. At this point, you might think you already know the solution. You might think you just need to take a deep breath, ignore them, and give them the silent treatment to show them who is boss. Stop. That is a dangerous trap. Sitting there, white-knuckling your chair, masking your anger while your heart races, and glaring at them to look tough is what we call performative silence. It is fake leverage. It is a peasant strategy because it still makes the attacker the center of your universe. You are using immense energy to suppress your reaction, performing toughness for their benefit. You are still absorbing their kinetic energy. You are just hiding the damage. It will burn you out. True decoupling requires a structural pause, not a theatrical mask. You must build the actual architecture to handle the spike. We call this the sterile buffer. Think of the sterile buffer as Lincoln's desk drawer, built directly into your nervous system. It is a mandatory 3-second gap between the moment their sentence ends and the moment your response begins. It acts like a surge protector on a power grid, grounding the electrical spike before it reaches your motherboard. During this gap, you are not plotting your revenge. You are not trying to look intimidating. You are simply letting the biological wave crest and break. You are using silence as an internal processing chamber, not an external weapon to punish the other person. Let us apply this to a concrete scene. Someone raises their voice at you in a high-stakes environment. Their kinetic energy hits you. The natural instinct is to rush to fill the dead air because silence feels awkward. Your ego wants to snap back. Instead, you deploy the Sterile Buffer. You maintain relaxed, neutral eye contact. You do not scowl. You do not smile. You hold the void. 1 second. You feel the adrenaline hit your chest. 2 seconds. You feel the physical urge to speak begin to fade as your prefrontal cortex comes back online. 3 seconds. You mentally separate their emotional heat from their factual payload. The airlock has done its job. The heat has been neutralized. Only the cold data remains. Silence is not a weapon you use against them. It is a fortress you build for yourself. The sterile buffer guarantees that you will survive the initial biological spike without saying anything foolish. It protects your baseline, but it is only the first step of the tactical execution. Once the buffer has successfully absorbed the shock, what exact words do you use to dismantle their aggression completely? What does absolute sovereignty look like in practice? You have successfully absorbed the shock. The sterile buffer has done its job. Your prefrontal cortex is back online, the adrenaline wave has broken, and the biological panic has faded. Now, you must execute. You must speak. Most people fail precisely here. They survive the pause, but the moment they open their mouths, their ego takes over. They try to sound tough. They attempt to deliver a clever comeback, a snarky remark, or a cold, biting reply to prove to the room how unbothered they are. But the execution is flawed. Their voice sounds tight. Their defensive posture betrays their inner turmoil. By trying to deliver a witty counterattack, they are simply picking up the attacker's knife and throwing it back. It keeps the fight going. It proves they are still bleeding. Instead of fighting, you must deploy the polite void. The polite void is the physical manifestation of a concept called asymmetrical data transfer. In a normal, healthy conversation, data transfer is symmetrical. I give you information and emotion, and you return information and emotion. In a hostile conflict, the attacker tries to force a symmetrical transfer of negativity. They give you aggression, and they desperately expect defensive friction in return. They want you to match their volume, so they do not look crazy doing it alone. The polite void breaks the circuit. You provide absolute professional courtesy with zero emotional heat. You become an informational black hole. Let us return to the concrete scene with the colleague who smirked and said they see you, finally finished the report. You have applied the 3-second buffer. The heat hit the floor. The facts have been extracted. Now, you execute the polite void. You do not scowl. You do not cross your arms or square your shoulders aggressively. You do not sigh heavily to signal your annoyance. You maintain a relaxed, open, and entirely neutral posture. Your voice is completely flat, calm, and stripped of all tonal flavor. It is the exact tone you would use to read a grocery list or state the time of day. You say, "Yes, the report is on your desk. The updated metrics are on page 4. Then, you stop talking. You do not ask if they have any other problems. You do not offer a forced, fake polite smile. You do not add a sarcastic hook at the end. The temptation for the untrained ego is to add one little dig, to say it is on their desk, unlike yours, or that it is on their desk, obviously. That single extra word destroys the void. It proves your ego is still involved. The discipline of the polite void requires the ruthless elimination of the last word. You speak the raw data, and you abruptly cut the feed. You simply look at them with the mild, unbothered expectation of a response to the facts. Look at the status cost of the alternative. If you try to win the argument with a clever comeback, you make yourself an equal combatant in a petty dispute. You accept their invitation to wrestle in the mud. The polite void elevates you entirely. When you return their high-heat attack with absolute, freezing courtesy, something profound happens in the room. The attacker destabilizes. They threw their weight against a door they expected to be locked, hoping to break it down. Instead, you simply opened the door, and they fell flat on their face into empty space. Because they received no friction from you, their own aggression suddenly looks massive, inappropriate, and foolish to everyone else watching. They are left holding all the social tension by themselves. They look unhinged. You look like a professional who cannot be bothered by childish antics. This is the power of asymmetrical data transfer. You give them exactly what is required professionally, the facts, and absolutely nothing they crave psychologically. You do not defeat chaos by fighting it. You defeat chaos by refusing to be a conductor for its electricity. This is how you handle the immediate moment of disrespect. But surviving individual arguments is still a tactical, reactive game. How do you elevate this principle? How do you move from defending yourself in isolated incidents to making this your permanent, unshakable baseline? What happens when you stop needing them to fear you? You now have the tactical tools to neutralize an attack. You know how to buffer the biological spike, extract the payload, and deploy the polite void. You can survive the tense boardroom or the passive-aggressive text message. But if you stop here, you are still playing a small game. You are still treating conflict as a battle you have to win. Many people enter the realm of power dynamics because they want to become intimidating. They want to master psychological tactics so they can make their coworkers, their exes, or their rivals fear them. They want to see the other person squirm. But this is the ultimate intimidation fallacy. If your feeling of power requires someone else to be afraid of you, then your power is entirely dependent on their emotional state. You are still a slave to their reaction. You are still outsourcing your baseline. We are moving past the tactical survival of an argument. We are moving toward absolute structural sovereignty. This means outgrowing the arena entirely. Imagine the concrete reality of this identity upgrade. You have just executed the polite void perfectly against a hostile colleague. The interaction ends. You walk out of the building and get into your car. In the past, this is the exact moment your mind would begin to spin. You would grip the steering wheel, replaying the conversation on the drive home. You would imagine what you should have said, analyze their facial expressions, and let their disrespect ruin your entire evening. Your physical body left the room, but your psychological body stayed in the fight. But with structural sovereignty, the aftermath is entirely different. You walk out of the room, get into your car, and within 10 minutes, your mind is genuinely empty of the event. You are thinking about your goals, your family, or your next strategic move. You are not suppressing the anger. The anger simply does not exist. Why? Because you have successfully audited their access to your emotional baseline. This is your practical application, the access audit. You must begin treating your internal emotional state as highly restricted, premium real estate. You have a finite amount of daily attention. Every minute you spend managing someone else's dysfunction or analyzing their toxic behavior is a minute stolen from your own life. The old you treated every minor provocation as an existential threat to your ego. The new you recognizes that fighting back is a demotion. You must stop viewing disrespect as an insult that must be answered and start viewing it simply as a low-value distraction to be bypassed. When someone is careless with their words, they are not insulting you. They are simply disqualifying themselves from premium access to your mind. This is the ultimate realization. True power is not forcing someone to respect you. True power is recognizing that their disrespect has absolutely no structural authority over your life, and therefore, it requires zero emotional processing. You do not need them to fear you, because you genuinely do not care if they do. You have decoupled your self-worth from their erratic behavior. You are no longer a participant in their chaos. You are an architect of your own peace. This is how you build a psychological fortress that cannot be breached by careless people. And it brings us to the final protocol, the single psychological declaration you must make to lock this identity in place permanently. You used to fear confrontation. You dreaded the sudden boardroom clash, the hostile email, or the tense family dinner because you believed conflict required you to be aggressive. You thought that surviving disrespect meant you had to fight back, raise your voice, or force a fake mask of intimidating silence. You viewed every argument as a terrifying battle for dominance, where you might lose your dignity if you did not have the perfect comeback. That is the old game. Now, you will experience a profound emotional reversal. You no longer fear confrontation because you recognize it for what it actually is. It is not a battle. It is merely a data sorting exercise. It is the simple, mechanical process of filtering the factual payload from the kinetic energy. You have left the ranks of the easily provoked. You have stepped into the identity of the untethered strategist. You understand that your internal baseline is the most valuable asset you possess, and you flatly refuse to hand the remote control to anyone who has not earned the clearance to hold it. So, here is your final strategic command for the next time someone attempts to disrupt your structure. Build the buffer, filter the facts, drop the knife. You must install this final psychological declaration into your mind. Let it dictate your posture in every room you enter. My availability to your disrespect is strictly conditional. If they bring facts, you will process the facts. If they bring chaos, they will meet the void. You are no longer an open channel for uncalibrated aggression. If you are ready to stop playing defense and start building true psychological leverage, subscribe to Leverage Doctrine, join the architecture of command, and continue reinforcing your internal fortress. Remember the ultimate rule of the kinetic decoupling. They can throw the fire, but they cannot force you to catch it.